Alongside all the nerfs we got this league, we also got some buffs. Buffs, you say? Shocker, I know. But one of these buffs stood out to me more than some of the others. And that was the buff to Shock Nova, which is also quite the shocker. For those of you who don't know, Shock Nova has two parts to it. An inner ring that does damage, and an outer nova that deals damage. It used to be that the inner ring did 50% less damage, but they completely got rid of this, so now both parts of the skill deal the same amount of damage. This is a pretty significant buff because it is possible to hit an enemy with both parts of the nova. If you look here at this image on the wiki page, you'll see the inner ring here, and the outer ring here. The ring in the middle is where they overlap, meaning you can hit one enemy with both parts of the skill if it's positioned correctly. Now, you could try to self-cast this and attempt to put yourself in a perfect position every time you use a skill, or you could chuck this bad boy into a trimmer rod and let the light show begin. As I'm sure you've already noticed, this character is using a low life setup, but the amount of ES he has is pretty awful. I honestly only went low life just to see how much damage I could get out of this build using a trimmer rod. Plus, I only had a 6-link trimmer rod and I'm still trying to 6-link my shavs. But ideally, you would go with a wand setup using a Prism Guardian. I actually think the shield setup has a ton of potential and you don't actually lose that much damage from making the switch, but you do gain a ton of survivability and quality of life improvements. You'd get around 3,000 more ES, you can put more levels into your Clarity aura, and you get Herald of Thunder and Vitality. Vitality is a massive buff to survivability because using Zealot's Oath with the Pyromaniac Ascendancy and Vitality, you almost get 1,000 ES regeneration a second. On top of all this, you can also opt in for shield charge with Fortify support, if you don't mind the playstyle of charging into enemies to keep it up, that is. Having Fortify alongside Born in the Shadows, Destructive Apparatus, and the high ES regeneration should make you pretty darn tanky. If you do decide to use a Trimmer Rod in this build, it'd probably be best to go with a life-based setup. It also might be worth looking into other skills to 6-link in your chest. Might be able to find a good skill for single target and just use Shock Nova for clearing or vice versa. But ultimately, I think you'll have a much better experience going low life with the Prism Guardian. So let's talk about our gem setup. First, we have Shock Nova with Inspiration, Trap and Mine damage, Increased Critical Strikes, Swift Assembly, and Blast Chain Mine. I'm currently using Anomalous Shock Nova, but it'd probably be better to go with the Divergent gem for the slight increase to damage. I don't think you'll be consistently hitting hard enough to make use of the anomalous quality, but I suggest playing around with it to see which one you like more. Next, we have Skitterbots, Clarity, Vitality, and Enlighten. It's important to pay attention to Clarity and what level it is. The setup has Clarity at level 10, but you may be able to get another level or two out of it, or you may find that you want a few less levels. Either way, just remember to think about it before leveling it up. Next, we have Zealotry, Vol Discipline, and Wrath socketed into our Prism Guardian. Then we have Sigil of Power, Flame Dash linked to a low-level Arcane Surge support, and Bear Trap. Sigil of Power is a decent damage boost, but it is also another form of damage mitigation if you can manage to get it to its max stage. This is another situation where you want to keep this skill at a lower level since the mana cost of the mines aren't very high. I'd suggest not leveling it over level 5, but you might even want to keep it at a lower level than that. On to our curse setup, which is Conductivity linked to Hex Touch support and Stormbrand. We also have Herald of Thunder socketed here as well. And lastly, we have a shield charge linked to Fortify and faster attacks. You might want to stop leveling Fortify at around level 16 to avoid having to invest more strength into using it. As for the item setup, it's pretty much your stereotypical low life setup. Obviously, you want a Prism Guardian, Shavron's Wrappings, and a presence of Chayula Amulet. The helmet isn't a necessity, but the Crown of the Inward Eye is a large damage increase, and it's super cheap to get one with a Shock Nova enchant on it, so I'd highly recommend it. As for the other items, you want rares with high energy shield rolls on them, and some rings that allow you to craft the mod non-channeling skills have -4 to total mana cost. When it comes to the flasks, I'm using an Overflowing Chalice, but I honestly found it a bit of a pain to deal with when also trying to detonate my mines, so I'll leave the decision up to you on whether or not to use this flask. As for other unique flasks, I think the Wise Oak is worth using, that is if you can get your resistances worked out. At the very least, you want your lightning resistance to be the highest, but if you can make them all even, then that is even more damage reduction. And the last two uniques you want are a large ring Thread of Hope and an Energy from Within jewel. You want the Energy from Within socketed here on the tree to take advantage of this cluster of life and ES nodes. And the last thing I want to talk about with the items is the Astral Projector ring. This ring allows you to target where you want to cast a Nova skill. If you're wearing this when using mines, then the mines will actually smart cast the Nova for you underneath enemies. This feels very good when clearing maps, but it makes this single target feel much worse because the Novas are always targeted at the center of the enemy, so you can never hit them with both parts of the skill. I really like this item, but stopped using it for the single target problems and just thought it was worth mentioning for anyone that might want to play around with it. And lastly, let's talk a little bit about the skill tree. When you're leveling, you're going to want to pick up life nodes until you can get your hands on the gear needed to make the switch to low life. I'm sorry, I don't have a life-based tree setup because this build was honestly just a meme build at first, so I didn't put much effort into all that. But if you've played the game before, then it shouldn't be too much of a problem for you to work that out yourself. As for the low life tree, you're just grabbing mind nodes, crit nodes, and ES nodes. For the large cluster jewel, you primarily want corrosive elements. The other nodes don't matter that much, so just pick up whichever one you can get for the cheapest. Then you want 2 small cluster jewels with energy from Knot for the added energy shield. This tree has 4 more passive skill points left, and you can put those wherever you might feel like you need them. You could grab the Written in Blood wheel for more ES, you could get the Doomcast wheel for more crit and crit multi, or you could get Arcane Expanse if you feel like you need more visual pollution on your screen. And that sums up the tree. There will be a link to the POB in the description, of course, so don't worry if my overview seems a little short. That's it for this guide. If you have any questions, just ask in the comments and I'll try my best to answer you. Hopefully you enjoy the build, and if you end up trying it out, let me know what you think. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time.